Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Resilience and Technology webinar. I want to just introduce myself to folks who don't know me. I'm Matt Hillman. I almost did it. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, and really pleased to welcome you all today. I want to thank our staff members, Lori Zimmerman and Dave Christians, for consistently looking for topics like this that resonate with our members. As you know, our mission is we're to be advocates of a world-class education for Minnesota's learners. And part of that mission statement also says that we empower leaders through high-quality professional learning and support. I think it really aligns well with what we're going to hear today from Kyle and Savannah from the Social Institute. According to their website, the Social Institute is the leader in equipping students, families, and educators with modern life skills to impact learning, well-being, and students' futures. And we know resilience and technology is obviously for the students that we serve, but it's also for us as leaders. So grateful to have you all here, and I'm pleased to turn this over to Kyle and Savannah. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think we can see it. Let me know if you can't, but good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. And, even though we're virtually meeting, I'm excited to share some of the learnings here from the Social Institute and representing to this group of school leaders who, more than anyone understand the challenges that students are facing, teachers, families, this ever-changing world of technology that we're facing. We know education has always required adaptability, but today we know that adaptability is being tested more than ever as we navigate things like AI, social media, the ever-evolving digital landscapes. And so being school leaders, we're constantly challenged to be resilient. We know it's one of the biggest skills we need as leaders. So that ability to anticipate, adapt, lead through rapid changes instead of reacting. So today we're going to explore that intersection of resilience and leadership, as well as with technology, and what are some different strategies to lead schools through these challenges with confidence. So quick agenda, what we'll cover today. I'll give you a quick introduction, and then we'll shift to some trends that we're seeing, what we've seen, some evolution in technology, and then we'll look at some what we call our three truths, and then some hands-on exercises. And it wouldn't be a TSI webinar if I didn't have some interactive some free resources at the end. So stick around for some of those. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Kyle Piccioli. I'm the Director of Partnership Enablement here at the Social Institute. A bit of background, I started my career as a special education teacher, and then I transitioned to the world of higher education. So worked with students at all levels of the education spectrum. I am very passionate about student well-being. I continue to work with students in the K-12 space in youth athletics. I also have two children of my own as well. So these topics are definitely near and dear to my heart. Before we jump in, I do want to just quickly make a note about the Social Institute. And while I am your speaker today, just know that everything you will see, like all of the stats and at the end, some of those resources, everything that we do when it comes to Win at Social is co-created with students across the country. We do have a student ambassador team. You'll see some of their faces here that we meet with, but we also collect insights in real time for our lessons through Win at Social. So a lot of the facts and things that you're going to hear about today, some of the trends and experiences are coming directly from students. So we know that that's important because if we think about what students are experiencing and what they're seeing, we know with things like algorithms today, it does look a little bit different than maybe us adults. And making sure we have that student voice and feedback is really important to our work and just what we consider essential to making sure everything that we're bringing to educators and students is relevant and relatable. So I want to just put that quick plug in there. But before we jump in, want to quickly huddle up with anyone here who feel free to add to the chat. And would also love to, hear if you throw in the chat and you answer this question, maybe what your role is, maybe like how much experience do you have? But let's answer this question. What's the biggest shift in technology you've had to adapt to since you started your career? So feel free to throw that in the chat. I'm going to try and pull up the chat too. This is always like a lovely challenge for me. pulling up the chat, but feel free to throw that in there. What are some things that you've seen since you've started your career? I'll also share some other ideas we've heard from other school leaders having this conversation, but we've heard things like, obviously, the things like the rise of smartphones, social media, one-on-one device initiatives. I think this is one of the most drastic changes that I've experienced in education. We've also heard things about like that shifting to more of online learning and hybrid models, other things like email miscommunications with families, and that being a big part of how education is changing, AI in the classroom, things like projectors, smart boards. So maybe some of those resonate with this group. I hear someone put just like technology and feeling like it's a 24/7 expectation. Absolutely. How normal it's become, staff needing immediate responses, social media, one-on-one devices. So thank you for those of you that have shared and maybe relate to some of these things that we've seen from school leaders. And so these responses, whether they're the ones up here, the ones that those of you shared in the chat, really highlight that reality that technology is always changing, and the tools we use might be different, but those skills of leadership and resilience remain the same. So the question is, how can we prepare for what's next? And that's what we'll continue to explore today. So before we jump into that, before we think about what that looks like, I do want to highlight some of those latest trends and what we're seeing. If you've ever been on a Social Institute webinar or seen any of our resources or thought leadership, we love to ground ourselves in what's actually happening. So some trending news stories that are powering our huddle today, and just making sure we're staying on top of those trends. So the first one really is that you'll see this in our work today is this data set that I'm going to bring to you, some information and trends that we have ascertained from students around what students are wanting. And one thing that we're seeing is that teens are asking for media literacy. They want to learn those life skills of the modern day. And we also know that some states are starting to require that education. We know that many states are requiring things like cell phone policies. And now what we're seeing really is that turn to AI policies. So whether that's something that your school has implemented already or exploring, that's definitely something that we're seeing more and more from districts and states across the country. And then we're also seeing that as of April 2025, we had about 17 states. So I'm sure that number has quite grown in the past year of those policies around like classroom and school cell phone usage. And we'll continue to see that rise with AI policies as well. I know there's recently and I can't think of the name of the students that went to Congress to ask for more federal policy around AI education and AI policies in public schools as well. And so that's definitely something for us to consider, that regardless of our ability to, whether it's like keep phones out of the classrooms or AI out of school or whatever it might need, we know that students really need to learn those skills for using those devices, using those tools. And some other challenge that we're seeing that schools are facing, we're hearing about things like misinformation, where whether it's false information or school systems having to deal with those trends. We're also hearing about students using things like ChatGPT or other AI companions to make up anonymous sources. So we're thinking about things like plagiarism. We're also hearing about things like students impersonating staff on social media, or even false accusations from AI plagiarism detectors. So as leaders, we're really like faced with a lot of different challenges and have to ask, like, how do we protect students and staff? But we also have to prepare them for this tech-fueled world that we now live in. So just some different challenges. I'm sure if I could see you all, I'm sure I'd get some head nods or I've heard about some of these things. But I want us to think about those trends we're seeing and which of those trends do you experience most at your school right now? So here are some of those examples that I was kind of talking on. I'd love to see if anyone could throw those, if they're willing to throw it in the chat. And if you want to just listen, that's okay too. But would love to hear from you all. What trends are you experiencing the most at your school, or you did this past year, and are top of mind for you as you're about to start the new school year here? These are some more trends that we're hearing right now from other educators. Things like device distractions in the classroom, not just phones, but devices. We're hearing things about like educator resistance to things like AI or technology, how families are perceiving or responding to the use of AI, even if it is for the academic benefit. Things like having to continually update policies because it feels like AI is just pacing so quickly. I know I talked a little bit about the rise in misinformation. One of those I've heard quite frequently this summer is the evolving role of educators as more and more tech is involved in AI and what that looks like. So if you're willing to throw that in, feel free. One of the biggest frustrations I heard in the past year, especially around like the middle and high school level, is how not just AI policies affect students and teachers, but also how do families interpret it? And also whether that varies from classroom to classroom, and also feeling like there's not all educators are on the same page. So that is definitely something I heard a lot. And it's not that teachers or admin don't care. It's that maybe there is not a unified approach, which can make enforcement difficult. It can make admin, students, teachers, all of them feel confused. And sometimes that inconsistency has led to some struggles and made it harder for students to develop those healthy habits. So all of these different trends, whether you've experienced them or not or heard of them, can lead to, even if you have those best intentions, it can lead to things like inconsistency or confusion for students or just friction in classrooms. So no matter where your school falls on these issues, we know that the challenge goes back to that idea of like, how do we lead through these changes without letting them overwhelm us? So moving into what I called those 3 truths. This is really what we've kind of whittled down as like, what is resilient leadership? What does it come down to? We don't want educators to feel stuck between having to embrace every new trend or every new tool or resisting tech altogether, right? Those are 2 vastly different ends. We want to make sure that leaders and educators can navigate these changes with clarity and with confidence. So this brings us to that next section, the 3 truths of leading through tech change. And these are, like I said, our 3 guiding principles that can help us stay ahead of change rather than to react to it. Okay, so truth number 1, which probably might seem like a no-brainer, but if there's one certainty education, it's that tech is not going to slow down. AI, social media, new tools, they will continue to emerge. So the question is, how do you prepare students or educators for a future you can't fully predict? And we know that the best leaders are resilient, and in that resilience, it's about being adaptable. So it's not necessarily about trying to craft the perfect policy that stands the test of time, but rather making sure you have something that can be fluid with what students are experiencing and what's coming up. You can go back and edit and revise as needed. An example of tech changing, we often talk about when calculators first came out, and concerns about, them doing math for students. Since then, we've obviously learned how to use them effectively as a tool. And that's a similar approach to when it comes to AI. It can be used as an extra resource or a tool to support learning, not necessarily do the thinking for students. And so that's part of our approach here at TSI. It's this idea of focusing on the do's rather than the don'ts. So how to be careful to not cross the line of plagiarism. How can you be aware of bias in AI, the importance of fact checking. And so these are all important conversations that can help guide students through this new era. But that's truth number 1. Tech is going to keep changing. It probably will continue to do so even faster than ever has before. The second truth is tech is evolving, but the qualities that make a strong leader will remain the same. So that idea of curiosity, clear decision-making, and listening to concerns are still tenets of a strong leader. We don't all need to be tech experts to lead effectively. We can, lean on other resources to do the research and the legwork to get you there, but we do need to be willing to ask the right questions, to empower teachers, to empower students and families, and have clear guidance throughout these shifts. And then that last truth, finally, is that the most successful schools don't just set the rules, they create a shared understanding of technology's role in learning. So we know that when policies are vague or inconsistent, students, families, staff, they can get frustrated. So when schools have clear, well-communicated tech philosophy, this is where we can foster that culture of responsibility engagement. So those three truths hopefully will ground this conversation in some of the exercises that we'll go into next, and help everyone understand kind of where we're coming through as our three anchors in this conversation. So now we're going to put this into action. We've explored the trends, the challenges, and those leadership principles that we think can help schools thrive through change with technology. But talking about that is obviously only the first step. So we're going to take it a step further and put some of these ideas into practice. So you'll see in the next slides, we're going to use AI to show us some different examples of different ways we can use AI, and also some things to be aware of as we use it. So we have 3 exercises to work through, and definitely feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. But I highly recommend you can steal these. You can bring these to your educators. You can do them together in groups. But it's to get some shared understanding around some of those principles. Okay, so the first one is called the perspective exercise. So I've mentioned about how unclear, inconsistent policies, those can lead to frustration for students, families, and educators. AI is a really great example of this, because we know schools are facing pretty difficult and really complex decisions about how to use and how to enable and I don't want to say police, but create policies around AI use in student work. And then how we communicate those decisions can really make or break how they're received in our community. There's not a single school or district that I'm talking to right now that's not either creating an AI policy, revising an AI policy. They have an AI task force, an AI committee. So we know it's top of mind for nearly every single school across the world right now. And this is true for our youngest, littlest learners all the way up to high school. So this activity, we're going to put ourselves in the shoes of a school leader drafting a policy announcement around AI, which I can imagine could be pretty timely given the time of year. And so we'll read through this email together and then think about some potential concerns, family concerns, and what changes we might make to make it clearer or more reassuring. So hopefully you can read it. I know if you're on like a smaller screen, it might be a little bit tinier, but I'll quickly read a little bit the email. It says, "Dear families, as new technologies like artificial intelligence become more integrated into daily life, we're committed to helping students navigate them in positive, responsible ways. At our school, we're taking a proactive approach to ensure AI enhances, not replaces, the learning experience. With that in mind, we've established key principles to guide how AI is used in our classrooms. Empowering every student. Teachers will be trained on how to use AI thoughtfully to support and elevate student learning. Protecting privacy and security. Any AI use by the school will align with regulations to keep student data safe and accessible. Building AI literacy. As a school with a growth mindset, students and teachers will develop digital literacy skills to use AI critically, ethically, and effectively. Balancing benefits and risks. We'll explore AI's potential while staying ahead of any challenges. Upholding academic integrity. Students will be expected to create original work, finish homework without the help of AI tools, and properly credit sources, including AI tools, in written assignments. Keeping human connection at the core. AI is a tool to assist, not replace educators and students in decision-making. Teachers will set clear expectations for AI in use in each class. Evolving with technology. We'll regularly review AI's role in learning and update policies as needed. We also encourage families to be aware of AI platform age restrictions. For example, ChatGPT requires users to be at least 13, with parental consent needed for students under 18. The platform itself notes that AI-generated content may not always be appropriate for all ages, so we encourage thoughtful and guided use. As always, our mission remains to provide a quality education that prepares students for the future, and what this future looks like continues to evolve, so will the way we support students to navigate technologies like AI in positive and high character ways. If you have any questions or insights, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for being part of this journey with us. So would love to hear in the chat and answer this question. If you were a parent or a family member reading this, or you're trying to proactively think about what are some of those concerns, what concerns might you see come up from this email? And are there any changes that you might want to make the message clear or more reassuring? Not gonna lie, the first time I read it, I did kind of think like, oh, this sounds pretty good. Sounds like we have some, like, this seems like it's going to be a good year for this school. So feel free to drop in a chat. Are there any concerns that you note, or any sort of potential feedback that you think could come from families or parents, or if you were a parent reading this? And to get some ideas started, I did do this with another group in person. And mostly it was about the specificity. So the first one around like building AI literacy. They felt like that was a pretty broad statement. How are you going to build AI literacy? How are you going to make sure my student is AI literate? What does it mean to be AI literate? So just feeling like that was super broad. Around the upholding academic integrity. How are students going to know how to credit sources? Is there a class that they're going to take? Is that going to be embedded into every class that they have? And then also one thing that a group I worked with brought up was like, if a student is falsely accused of plagiarism, how will that process look like? Like, what would happen if my student was accused of plagiarism, but they didn't use AI, which we know has happened to students across the country. The other piece too, how teachers will communicate expectations for each assignment. It says that they will, but it doesn't give a lot of detail into how they will do that. So a lot of the feedback we got from educators was just about making it more clear, being more specific, and making parents feel like exactly what would happen. The other piece too that I had a group give me feedback on was around this age restrictions. So felt like that was a little bit of an end note when it could have been a little bit more clear and maybe highlighted a bit more. But thinking about some of those thoughts, we can take this a step further. And this is how you can actually use AI to also make sure that we're leading through some of these moments with that resilience like we had talked about. So you could take this email, share it with whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, and ask it to analyze it from a parent's perspective and identify any potential gaps and concerns. And I think I have to hit play, so excuse me. And what it generated was a pretty insightful list. So you can see asking to look at this email. Sorry, I should hit play a little bit sooner. From the perspective of a parent, and asking to like poke holes in it. What are some questions? What are some issues that might come up? Are there any gaps that it could see? And then, yeah, we love that here at TSI, poke holes. Like, tell us what's wrong with it. And so right away, it's going to jump in. It's going to take a second. And it will talk about some concerns that parents might have after reading this. So clarity and specificity concerns. How will teachers be trained on AI? So are they having a specific type of training? What regulations does the school follow for data privacy? It says aligns with regulations, very broad. Growth mindset. What does a growth mindset mean in relation to AI literacy? Like, talk more about that. How will academic integrity be enforced? What does an AI as a tool to assist actually mean in the classroom? Does that mean students are going to be using AI? And then it moves to some practical concerns, things like how will AI impact grading and assessments? That's a huge topic we've heard from families and students. Will teachers use AI to grade things? Will students be required to use AI? Will it be a requirement? which AI tools will the school use? Now it's going a little faster than I'm talking. Sorry about that. And then how does the policy apply to younger students? Other things like safeguards in place to prevent biases and misinformation. So all of those things are pulled out. It's going to, I'm just going to back it up a little bit. Other things asking about parent involvement and consent. So like, is there a role that families have in shaping this AI policy? Will they be asking for feedback from families? Will parents be consulted on future policy updates? And can parents opt out of AI use? So the last area it flagged is, I'll just pause it, it's going very quickly, is tone and framing. So it did pick up a lack of reassurance about screen time concerns, which we know is really top of mind for families right now. And the policy reads as though AI adoption is frankly inevitable rather than something the school is thoughtfully navigating with student well-being in mind or with feedback from families. So you can take it a step further. You can ask it to rewrite the email, or how can you use those insights to rewrite the message in a way that will proactively answer those concerns, reassure families, and then creates clarity. So it's going to go ahead and do that. And I won't read the entire email, but what happens is it does become more transparent. It becomes more concise and more aligned with what families need to feel informed and involved. And just like we would teach our students, we don't want to copy and paste AI generated content, but we could use this as a thought partner to help us think through multiple perspectives and ensure we're addressing key questions before they even arise, which can be a time saver as well, just to think about like poking holes in some things before they go wrong. So going back to that idea of like unclear policies, we know that that can lead to unintended consequences. So that first email was pretty, I would say, vague. It really did read like just a pretty vague email, probably something that maybe AI did generate, or there wasn't as much detail. And we know that when there's unclear policies, it can lead to unintended consequences. So when we have unclear policies around the use of AI or just tech use in general, that can lead to violations that maybe students didn't even realize they were committing, like things around academic integrity. It can also lead to things like missed opportunities to teach responsible tech use. And it can lead to frustrations. We know that not just from families, but students can also feel confused. Educators can feel frustrated. And if you think about it, we've seen students been caught in those gray areas many a times because they weren't sure what was actually allowed. Or we've seen teachers struggling to enforce a rule because the policy is too broad or inconsistent. So we know students, they do want to do the right thing, but they need tech policies they can actually understand to follow. So thinking about being clear and how can we make our AI policies student friendly, that means using simple, clear language. So not education jargon, not legal terminology, but just straightforward expectations they can remember and apply. It also means to give them examples, real world examples, so they can see how the policy plays out in their daily lives. So instead of saying AI must be used responsibly, we could say we can use AI to brainstorm ideas, but all the work must be your own, and AI generated text has to be cited. That removes ambiguity. It helps students make informed choices. And then lastly, making sure we're consistent. Consistency does matter. If one teacher bans phones completely, another allows them for music, a third one just lets them do whatever. We've seen that often doesn't let students adapt. They struggle. It can create unnecessary conflict. The same thing is absolutely true when it comes to things like AI policy. The other piece too is engaging students in the creation. One thing that we really want to make sure that we're engaging students, we're gathering feedback. We actually had an AI webinar series in July, and the last one, little plug for one that I did with an educator up in upstate New York. She talked through some really amazing examples of how they actually had students apply for their AI, I think it was like their AI student committee, and they had students across the district apply for it. And it was a day, they got out of class for it, but it was a day where they went and basically gave feedback on all different examples around AI, and the district used some of that feedback in their policy creation. Okay, My slide's loading. I hope it loads. Uh-oh. But this is another activity that I was going to share, and I might have to quickly unshare and reshare again because it looks like it's not loading. So let me just quickly unshare and see if I can get this to oh, sorry about that. Uh-oh. Let me just refresh my screen. Resilience through technology. Hopefully this works. If not, we'll just have to pivot. Okay, it might not be loading. So I will just either skip it or we'll move on. Yeah, you guys can't see that, right? It's a black screen. Okay, well, sorry about that. We'll probably have to skip this exercise. But I'll just quickly explain what this exercise was, and then we'll move on quickly because I know it's not that probably is not the most helpful. But this exercise was meant to be around misinformation. And so what you could do here is you could go to a ChatGPT or a Claude, and I basically I asked it to show me a photo of a school leader, and it put out a photo of a man with, like, I don't know, just like with some students. And we know that in reality, school leaders could look a lot different than just this one guy. And so this was really around like AI taking on some biases within society. So yeah, part of the slide didn't load. So we'll move on to the next slide, and just talk about some of that around student misinformation and what can happen around AI and misinformation. So I know I talked a little bit about some of those things, but we've seen misinformation in some real world events. We've seen students fall for completely false information. There was an example of the wildfires back in 2025 in Los Angeles, where misinformation actually spread faster than actual news, and students were circulating fake evacuation orders, AI generated images of destruction that were totally fabricated. We've also seen things like deep fakes and AI manipulation in schools. We know that some students have actively used AI to create misinformation. We're seeing things like deep fake videos where students fake their own voices to get out of classes. We're also seeing AI generated videos impersonating teachers and spreading false statements. So really concerning, some of those concerning trends when it comes to misinformation and AI. We also saw some students using AI to generate fake historical events or misrepresent scientific data in their assignments. So we know that for teachers and leaders in this space too, if we don't actively guide students to fact checking AI generated content, we're going to run that risk of misinformation being absorbed as the truth. So how can we combat this misinformation through AI? Two major ways that we can tackle this challenge in schools. The first one is providing teachers with professional development on AI. Reality is most educators aren't trained in AI literacy, and some might be uncomfortable with it. So if we expect teachers to help students navigate misinformation, we first need to make sure that they feel confident in recognizing things like AI bias, fact-checking sources, integrating responsible AI use into their lessons before we even bring that to students. So we know that for schools, investing in AI-focused professional development not only empowers their educators, but it can also lead to a culture where AI literacy becomes that shared responsibility. Secondly, we have to help educators champion AI literacy with students. So once teachers feel equipped, we can then empower students to develop critical thinking skills when engaging with AI generated content. And that could be things like analyzing search results, identifying bias, understanding the ethical implications of AI tools. Schools that take this proactive approach help prevent things like misinformation from taking root because the students, they know how to challenge and verify the information they consume. And that leads us to our fundamental truth we always say here at the Social Institute is that students can't be what they can't see. And so if we want students to think critically about AI and critically about misinformation, we have to model that behavior as educators. Okay, so the last exercise that we're going to talk through before I hand you over some resources to walk away with is this policy exercise. And if you're a parent, this might look familiar to you, the Baumrine's theory of parenting. And so this is also how we're thinking about different ways of approaching AI phone use, misinformation, anything related to like tech and policy, and how it can align with this theory of parenting. It was obviously developed for parenting, but it's super applicable in the broader context of education, especially when it comes to tech. So just breaking it down, we have the top left here, permissive, which is this idea of a hands-off approach. Rules are vague, they're rarely enforced, or maybe they're absent. Then we have the bottom right, which is that authoritarian, which is basically the opposite extreme. So strict rules, heavy punishment, not a lot of discussion, and structure, very structured, which is definitely important. This approach can often backfire because students don't understand the reasoning behind the rules, which, as you can imagine and likely know, will lead to resistance, sneaky workarounds, frustrations, all of those things. Then we have the neglectful. So that would be uninvolved, little structure, not a lot of communication. And then that top right, authoritative, which is where research shows that best outcome, whether it's in parenting or education. So that idea of solving problems with students rather than, for them or against them, setting clear expectations, but also allowing room for discussion and adaptation as well. And we've seen that really does encourage responsibility. It fosters trust and promotes that real world application. And so what's critical about this theory is this idea of that when schools if they can adopt this top right approach where tech policies are clear, they're consistent, they're co-created with student input, maybe even family input, definitely teacher input, we can see things like higher academic performance, stronger emotional intelligence, better digital citizenship. And that's really the sweet spot where students can understand the rules, feel respected, and then are more likely to follow them as well. And we know that when we invite students into those conversations about things like AI, they take more ownership of responsible tech use. So applying that same thinking to how schools integrate tech into learning, we call it our TSI's theory of tech integration. And so just like before, there's no one size fits all approach. Schools often land in different places based on their priorities, their resources, what students need. But we have that top left, that would be the minimal tech. So same idea in this model, tech is minimized or not used at all for learning. So this is where devices might be heavily restricted or banned. We know that this approach will reduce distractions, but it can also limit opportunities for students to potentially develop essential digital literacy skills that they'll definitely need in college and careers beyond school. Then we have that structured use where technology is used primarily for learning, but with strict rules around non-academic use. This approach ensures that tech is purpose-driven, but if the rules are too rigid, sometimes students could miss out on learning how to use tech responsibly in real-world scenarios. Then we have the open use, which I haven't met many schools in this category, but you never know. They allow tech for educational purposes, but they're also way more flexible on personal device policies. This model gives student autonomy, but if policies are not clearly defined, it could create inconsistencies with how tech is used. And then we have this integrated and open model where tech is fully embedded into learning and students have structured flexibility in using tech responsibly. Oftentimes schools in this quadrant, they're going to really focus on teaching digital responsibility alongside that tech integration, and think about giving students the tools to regulate and maintain engagement. So yeah, what are some of the pros and cons in each? Thinking of, if you want to drop that in the chat, or which one maybe represents your school's current approach, where would you like to be, or what some challenges stand in your way? Feel free to drop that in the chat. I'll also share some things we've heard from other schools, or especially around, I'll start with the minimal tech. What we've heard from schools there is like the pro is you really limit the risk of things like AI cheating, cyberbullying. It encourages that traditional learning and face-to-face, but we also see that students, they miss opportunities there to develop digital literacy skills. It can also feel potentially outdated or disconnected, which students might struggle with that, and they might struggle with technology use when they move into the world of higher education or the workforce. The other piece with that model is that teachers might not have access to valuable digital learning tools as well. This structured use, definitely some pros is technology is very much purpose driven. Students use devices for educational activities. It reduces off-task behavior. It definitely provides teachers with a consistent framework for tech use. I think in the world of cell phone bans, this is where so many schools have leaned into, and it makes sense. Some of those cons are that if the policies are so rigid, again, students might not be developing those real world digital responsibility. And it may create challenges for teachers and limit students from potentially exploring and collaborating on some digital tools. Also, it could also create some equity issues. Students with tech access at home may advance faster than those who rely on school devices. So another thing to keep in mind. Bottom left, definitely there's some pros. It supports creativity, collaboration, engagement. But those cons, if there are no clear guidelines, we can see that usage might vary between classrooms. There's a higher risk of off-task behavior. Students might use devices for non-academic purposes. I did meet a school recently. They don't have a firewall, nothing. It's basically they're in that open use quadrant. So it has some interesting challenges for them. And it can often just create some gray areas in enforcement as well for teachers and administrators. And then that bottom right, which, could be that ideal model. Again, it's going to depend at school to school and the resources you have, but this is where technology is embedded in learning. Pros, obviously, we're teaching students about digital responsibility. They're practicing self-regulation when it comes to things like tech and AI. It encourages blended learning, project-based collaboration. It helps prepare students for careers, for college, for real-world tech environments that they're going to encounter. And it can help build trust between educators and students. However, there are cons. It requires really intentional training for educators and students. It also requires schools to provide really strong literacy education so that there is responsible use. It also could mean like some stakeholders in the school community, like parents or teachers, might resist this and they might not be fully bought in. And then again, it also has its on of potential equity concerns if access to tech is not equitable across students, and any sort of like disadvantages that they might have of lacking resources at home. So would definitely, anyone that's listening, think about like where do you think your school currently is, or would you want to be? And what are some of those barriers that you would have to move into the desired quadrant you'd want to be in? So lastly, before I head into some resources for y'all, I did want to just have a few takeaways now that we've gone through those activities, and apologies that the one did not work, but also thinking about some of those 3 truths as well as being an effective leader. We know tech policies are not about locking in rules forever. They're about continuously adapting to a world that we know does not stand still, and it will continue to be this continuous cycle that you'll see on the right. So the graphic that we have here shows that continuous cycle. We want to stay ahead of the trends and review and adapt policies as they evolve. And as long as that we're doing that, all that we can for our community in there as well. And so when you dig further into those resources, you'll find some visuals that show how we can understand students the more we equip them. So thinking about regularly reviewing and adapting policies as AI evolves, soliciting ongoing feedback from students and teachers, I would say families as well, really important and essential in this changing landscape that we're in. And then making sure we're monitoring trends to stay ahead of those potential challenges. If you continuously do those things and continuously engage in this cycle, that result will be this living policy that is apt for a changing landscape. Okay, so as we're closing out here, and before I share some QR codes and activities you can take with you as you're thinking through these topics, I definitely want to bring it back to the beginning of our session where we talked about how today's world requires resilient school leaders. And so if you take away anything from this conversation, some takeaways. 1, tech will always change. We have to lead through it, not react to it. So resilience is about being proactive, not reactive. We've seen the schools that succeed don't just wait for these disruptions to happen, they prepare for them. We also, another takeaway is that the best leaders balance innovation with practicality. We can't ignore tech, but we also can't jump on every trend without a strategy. Strong policies can really help us bridge that gap. And then lastly, the goal is not to fear or ignore tech, it's to make thoughtful decisions. Resilient leaders don't panic in the face of change, they adapt. And so that's what it really all comes down to. We are shaping that future of education, not just reacting to it. So when we approach things like AI, misinformation, when we approach it with clarity, adaptability, we set up our students and also our entire school communities for success in a world that will keep changing. And before I jump to some of these resources, I would like all of you to think about this. What's a small action you can take this week to lead through today's tech challenges? And if you're not sure where to start, if you don't want to drop it in the chat, that's okay. I can share some ideas from other school leaders that we've heard within the past few months. But one is around like asking teachers about AI use in their classrooms and what support they need, reviewing their tech policies, making sure they're clear, maybe trying to use one of those strategies to poke holes in them, model an AI or ed tech tool and shows how it can save time for teachers. Really important, that modeling. Exploring your digital literacy training and how you can integrate it into your curriculum for students, for teachers. And also thinking about refining your parent communication on your, whether it's phone policies, AI policies, and how can you improve clarity and buy-in. So those are some ideas we took from educators. Feel free to take all or one. And now I'm gonna kind of pivot and share some resources that if you wanted to take some of these steps, we do have some things that could make that a little bit easier for you. So first one is not really a resource for that, but if you've made it to the end of this session and you are interested in winning something, which who isn't interested in winning something? We also would appreciate any feedback on the session itself. We're always looking for ways to improve and continue to support school communities. So your insight is super helpful if there's a certain topic that you're really interested in. And of course, if you want to win something, please feel free to scan that code and enter. The other thing that I will share here is our 2026 Student Insight Report. If you like hearing about trends that we're hearing from students and some of those insights, this insight report is based on the responses of over 53,000 students from our anonymous kickoff questionnaire and data points that we run through our Win at Social lessons with students across the country. So really great insight in here as an educator to share. And honestly, I've heard so many teachers and educators sharing this with students too, and it being a great way to like spark conversation. I know we talked a lot about creating clear policies. This is a guide to help walk you through if you are examining your AI policy or you're thinking about revising it or you don't have one yet. This is a resource that you can use to think about how you can make sure your policies aligned with things like privacy laws, academic integrity, how to make sure your students are being equipped with some of those skills. How do you shape and update your policies that could be evolving as emerging tech is coming out? So this is a great starting point and can help you just like check in on, where you want to go with that, or maybe you want to share this with another leader at your school. And sorry, I'm also seeing the chat. Savannah's dropping these links in the chat too. So if you're not a QR code person, you definitely can just go ahead and follow those links. Next resource is our classroom tech policy. This is great to share with educators when they're thinking about what is our policy going to be for this upcoming school year. And we highly recommend that when you're doing that, you are brainstorming it with students. So this process really involves students. It's a great way to like level set at the beginning of the year. You can have teachers huddle with students. They can set standards for tech and AI in the classroom. You can reinforce any existing policies you might have. And it also empowers your teachers to create that policy alongside students. So great starting point for this. And then last one, sorry, there's two more. I know so many resources. This is just a guide around deepfakes and how they might impact your school community. So if you are like, I heard Kyle say deepfake a couple of times, I'd like to know more about that. And I'd like to know what students think about that. So this is actually a printable checklist that you can share with students to help them spot deepfake content, which to be honest, it's also a great checklist for adults as well. So feel free to use, distribute as you see fit. Okay, last thing that is a QR code. But again, Savannah will put it in the chat, is our weekly huddle. So if you are interested in trending stories, events, things that are going on impacting students, now that the school year is getting started, this is something we send out weekly, and it'll just go straight to your inbox. Things that we're seeing from students, trends. It also guides educators to create discussion prompts. So you could have educators even lead conversations with students around some of these things. So if there is a story around, AI misinformation, it's a great way for educators to garner feedback from students and also help them stay up to date on what's happening and what our students are experiencing. So highly recommend subscribing to that. In the summer, we don't do it every week, but we're about to transition into the fall. So it will come into your inbox more often than that. Okay, lastly, just wrapping up, if you are interested in following us on social, if you wanted to hear more about those webinars, I know I mentioned an AI webinar series we did in July. All of that's on our website, but you can also find the links for that anywhere on social. We do webinars throughout the year that are completely open to any educator on a lot of different topics, not just AI. We've done things from like hearing from other educators, things around like phone policies, behavior concerns, really like it runs the gamut. So highly recommend checking out those webinars. They're always recorded, so you can go back as well and watch them. And we have a lot of great content this past summer where we brought in some experts around some topics around AI. So if that's top of mind for your school or district right now, also recommend that. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. Please feel free to take advantage of our free resources. If you have any questions or feedback, you can always feel free to email me. That's my email there on the bottom. But otherwise, really appreciate you taking the time to hear from us today. And best of luck to everyone as the start of the school year is coming soon. I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky. We've been in school for almost a week at this point. So it's definitely here, and wishing everyone the best and appreciate the opportunity to connect with all of you today.
Yes, thanks everybody for joining us today. Let's give Kyle and Savannah a great virtual round of applause for this information. We thank you for sharing your expertise with our members. So thanks so much for being here.
Awesome.
And thanks to our members for joining. We appreciate it as always. There's some feedback obviously through the forum, but you can also always provide Lori, Dave, or I with direct feedback about these webinars and other things you might want to learn about. So thanks so much, all. Have a great day and enjoy. We don't have too many places in school yet, but next week we'll probably start seeing some.
Yeah.
So
enjoy those last few days of summer.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.